There's a troubling story that's coming out of Germany. For years in Germany, vulnerable young boys had been placed in foster care of pedophile men. A damning study at Hildesheim University also says that the authorities either ignored evidence of abuse or were actually complicit in letting this continue. The cases stretch all the way from the 1960s to 2003 at the latest. RT's Peter Oliver has been speaking with some of the victims who've come forward.
Decades of abuse carried out by those put in a position to protect the most vulnerable in society. For 30 years, starting in the 1970s, Berlin authorities placed children in the care of a convicted paedophile named as Fritz H. I spoke to two of his victims. To protect their right to anonymity, they'll be named only as Sven and Marco.
Our daily lives were dominated by instructions. We were shielded from the outside world like a sect.
Most of the time we faced violence. If we wanted to go out or meet someone else, we were intimidated and told these people were bad, that we should have nothing to do with them. If we wanted to go anyway, we were forbidden. Every day it was mental and physical mistreatment, and we're only realizing this now. We were forced to do things we wouldn't normally do because we were threatened. That was our life. The worse the treatment, the more you felt this person was important to you. Every day with this man was a fight for survival and a fight to preserve yourself.
What makes this all the more troubling is that the lives of these men, as well as others, were essentially being toyed with as part of an experiment by then venerated psychologist Helmut Kendler. Even after his death in 2008, Kendler was regarded as a founder of modern sexology. He was, in effect, little more than a matchmaker, putting neglected children into the care of predators.
We learned about this experiment when Dr. Nentwick called in 2017. My thought was, this can't be true. I was not a mere product of chance. I was deliberately selected by the Berlin branch of the SPD party, the ruling party at the time, that hired a mercenary to destroy our lives in an experiment. When we heard about it, we felt anger and pure bewilderment. What particularly bothers us is that the names of those responsible are missing. But there must be a further investigation. In my opinion, this is one of the greatest crimes of the post-war era.
The care system in Germany has changed dramatically since Kendler's time when it comes to who can act as a foster parent. But authors of a study into the Kendler experiment have told RT that there is no way his crimes were carried out without the Berlin Welfare Office being directly involved.
In Germany, foster care is the responsibility of the youth welfare offices. So children and adolescents who live in foster homes always grow up under state observation. The things that occurred in foster homes we examined could not have happened without the knowledge of officials in the youth welfare authorities.
There has never been a state investigation into the actions of Kendler and his experiment. Berlin senators told us they are pushing for a nationwide examination to look at the real scale of the abuse.
Since we have nationwide connections, further research cannot be limited only to Berlin. The Center for Education, Youth and Family has said that she wants to submit an application to the Conference of Ministers to deal with sexual violence in foster homes.
The victims of abuse say the knowledge of the Berlin government makes them complicit in the crimes. Sven and Marco are pushing for legal action today after having been failed by the authorities then.
The Berlin Senate is 100% involved. The Berlin Senate initiated it and then tolerated it. It's already been admitted verbally, but not legally.
This is a particularly harrowing story of exploitation and failure to protect those the state was expressly directed to protect.
Peter Oliver reporting to us. Wow. What a story. I don't even know where to begin. George Galloway joining us now. George, can you put any kind of punctuation on this thing?
Well, it's about as close to pure evil as it's possible to imagine. It's the kind of experiment you might have expected from Mengele in the death camps in the 1930s and 40s, but was instead carried out by the Social Democrats. not the Nazis, and not in the 30s, but in the 1970s, and lasting for 30 years, right until the 21st century. It almost beggars belief. And I can tell from your voice that it's had the same impact on you as it's had on me and probably all of our viewers. But it would be wrong to imagine that this is restricted to one part of Germany or to Germany itself. There is a whole body of men, some women, but mainly men, who in that period, in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, somehow imagined that sex with children was an extension of sexology, an extension of homosexuality, people who blurred all these lines and who proselytized for, sometimes publicly, sometimes privately, the right of small children to consent to sex with grown men. And this is a much bigger issue, Rick, and it involves not just a few hundred people in Germany, but millions of people, I think, throughout the Western world.
Wow. So well said, George. I appreciate you putting that punctuation on that story. So much left to be said, by the way, and something that we all over the world, not just in Germany, need to be mindful of and watch for and not be embarrassed to declare or call out. That's our news. Thanks so much for being with us.